Hey, what's up everyone? In this video, I will show you how to fetch data from an API in your React application. By the end of this video, you will have a list of products which will look like this, and these all products are fetched from an API. So let's get started. First of all, you'll need to create a React project, and you can do that by accessing the link of a document which I have shared in the description box. And this is the document which I'm talking about, where you'll find the steps to create React application using Vite, and I've also added the steps to add your project in your GitHub repository. If you don't want to do this, then you can just come to my GitHub profile. The link of this repository will be there in the description box as well. You can just clone it from here, have it in your own laptop or your desktop, and then you can access that project. So let's get to it. So I have this content all here, and I have my server up and running on localhost. This is what we see in the beginning, and I don't want all of these things, so I can just remove them. And yeah, so first of all, I'll remove this state variable as well, the logo, and I want to keep useState hook and the useEffect hook as well, because we will have some state variables which will hold the data, the error if we have any while fetching the data. So I'll first go ahead and create a state variable which will store the products, and it will have the set products function to change the state variable, the value of the state variable, and in the beginning it will hold an empty array. We also want to have a state variable for the loading state. So when we are fetching the data, we should make sure that we show something to the user, so that the user is aware that we are making an API call. And this one in the beginning will be true, and I will have another state variable to store the error if we get any error from the API, and this will be an empty error at first, an empty string. So I'm going to start by creating a handler which is going to fetch data, and this will be an async function because we are going to handle async operations, and we are going to make use of the fetch function which is provided by the browser. So, and we are going to store the response. So we make an API call using fetch, and we want to pass the this URL, and I'm going to have some limit as well because I want to have all the elements, all the products from the API. And by default, I think we get, I think, 20 or 30 from this one, but I want to have more than that. So I'm going to pass 500, but I think it has only around 200 products. And this is, we have to add the await keyword here because this is an asynchronous operation, and we have to wait until we get the response from the API. So when we get the response, we have to convert it into the JSON format, which is again going to need us to add the await keyword. And we are going to do response.json. And first of all, we can check what we get in the data, and we will have to use the use effect here because this is something which we want to do when the component gets rendered. Because when the user comes on this page, and we want to make an API call when the user arrives on this page. So we'll make an use of the use effect hook, and I have passed the empty dependency array because I want it to get executed only once when the component is rendered, not every time when there is a change in the state variable. So let's to give you a basic information on that, when we pass an empty array as a dependency array, then it gets rendered only once. when we don't pass anything, we don't pass an array, then it gets executed every single time when the component re-renders. So that adds up to the performance time, which we don't want to happen. And the third case is we pass a dependency array and we pass some variables in it. So that means the execution of that hook is dependent on the variables passed in that array, and whenever there is a change in any of those variables, this hook will get executed. So this is it, and I'm going to execute our fetch data function in here. And if I save this, come here, open my console, you see we have some response from the API, and we have this products array in the response, and we have around 194 products. Now that we have the response, I want to add some error handling as well, because we want to manage the state for the error, and we also want to manage the state for the loading state. So I can say is loading is set to false, because once the app is done with these things by going through the try block, executing everything in there, if it gets an error, then it will uh, give us the error, and finally it will come to this block where this will be executed no matter what happens up there. So we will always be setting the state to false, because we know that when the app gets app renders everything, the try block and the catch block, that means the API is has given some response, either a response or an error, and that means we don't want to show the user that the app is still loading. So when we get the response or the error, we either want to show the response or we want to show the error to the user. And that's why we have this finally block, which is anyway going to execute it no matter what happens before that. So I'm going to do all of these things in here. So let's move it in the try block. And instead of logging the response, I'm going to set this to data. And if you notice, we have a products array inside the response. So we have an array products inside data. So I'm going to do data.products. And if we get an array or if we get any error, then I want to set it to set error. And we have a way to make sure that we don't get an error, or we if we get an error, then we throw it. Then the JavaScript will be able to catch it here in this block. So we can check if response dot okay, that means if we get the status code 200, that means the response is okay. And if we don't get it, that means we have some error. And what we can do is we can throw new error, and we can say could not fetch data, and this error will be caught in the catch block, and we will get to see it in here. So I can also do console dot error e, so that we'll get to know what happens in here. And now that we have done this, let me make a mistake deliberately. Let me make a mistake intentionally. I have entered the wrong URL. Let's see what we get when we refresh the app. Okay, so this is the error we get. We failed to fetch, and we have this error on line 29, and this is how we get to see the error. So now that we have an error, if we pass the correct URL, let's see what we get. We have to move it in here so that we don't get the undefined error. Okay, now we can see the data, and we have the products, and we don't see any error because the URL is the right one. So what I want to do here is I want to loop through the products we have. I'm going to use the map function, and I want to display the title of all the products. For now, I'm going to display the title, and we will have this here as product. If I do it this way, and it shouldn't be products, I save this. Okay, now that we have all the titles of 194 products, we also want to make sure that we make use of the error and is loading state variables. So if we make an API call and if we haven't received any response or the error, then we have to show the user that we are the page is still loading. So if is loading is true, I want to return a span element which says loading. I'm also going to add an if statement for error. So let's say error dot length is greater than 0. Then I will say I can just show the error in here. So let's go there on the browser, refresh the page. You see, we get to see the loading text for a few seconds, for a milliseconds. So that means we this is now working. So you see this error in here that each child in a list should have a unique key prop. That means we are making use of the map function inside our code, and every child should have a key, and this is what makes it unique. Because if we don't specify the key, that means it takes the id or the index, let's say. So we can have this another variable over here, and this will start from 0, and if we don't pass any key, then it will consider the index of the element as the key, and it affects the performance of the application. It affects the consistency of the application. That is why it is recommended to have a unique key for every element. If we are using the map function, the filter function, anything, if we are looping through the data, we should have a key property inside the element. And for now I'm going to use product.id, which is the best way because this will be unique for every single product, and the product will be identified by it, and we won't be having any consistency issues. So if I go there now, refresh the page, we don't see any error. So this is how we fetch the data. Let me recap through it. So I've created these three state variables. The first one is the products, which holds the the list of products. The second one is the is loading, which manages the state. It lets us know if the API is making an if we are making any API call or not. If we are, then we get to see the loading text. If we are not, then we'll get to see an error or the response. We have this third state variable which will hold the error if it is returned by the API call. And then I added a handler to fetch the data, and this is an async function because we are handling these async operations over here. Then we make an API call using the fetch function, which is the web API, and we pass the URL. We pass the limit as 500. This is the dummy JSON, and we store it in the response variable. We make use of the await keyword because we don't want to move forward unless we have the response from the API. So we then check if we have any error, and if we don't get the 200 status code from the API, that means it does not perform uh, correctly, and that's why we have the error. So we throw that error, and that error will eventually be caught by the catch function, the catch block. Then if we don't get any error, then we move forward, and we convert the data into a JSON, and then we log this, and we also set the products to the products variable. Then we come to the catch block. If we get an error, then it will be set to the error variable, and then we come to the finally block where the set loading will be set to false, so we won't get to see that loading text. Then we make use of the useEffect hook because we want to make the API call when the page is rendered, and we execute this fetch data function here. So if we find that the value of is loading is true, then we show the loading text. If we see that the error, if we have an error, or if the length of the error is more than 0, that means we have the error, so we show that there is an error. And let me add the curly braces for this one, save it. And then we come to the JSX where we loop through the products array, and we just show the title for now. We are going to make some changes into it, but for now we are just showing the title. So this is how you fetch data from an API using the fetch function or the fetch web API. And this does not really look good, uh, and it might look good for now because we don't have a lot of code or so many lines of code. But we are working in React, we have to follow the single responsibility principle. That means every component should have only one responsibility. When it comes to this component, the app.jsx file, this has two tasks. It first fetches the data, then it shows it on the page. So that means it has two different responsibilities which shouldn't be happening. So instead of fetching the data and then showing it in the same file, why not we create a custom hook, and we can move the fetching logic in there, and then we can import that hook, and we can import these three state variables from there, and then we show them on the page. So I'm going to the source folder, creating a separate variable for hooks. I already have this folder, so I'm not going to create it. And I'm going to add use fetch products .js file in here. I'm not going to rename it as JSX because we won't be having any JSX inside it. And I'm going to do the same thing which I've done. So I'm just going to copy and paste everything we have right now. So let's move this into this. Then I'm going to create a function which must be exported. So export const use fetch products, and inside it I'm going to have these three state variables. And I will also move this handler and the use effect hook as well. And from this hook we are going to return the products is loading variable and error. This is now done, and this is how the hook looks like. Then we come to the app.jsx file, and I'm going to import use fetch products, and I'm going to import or extract by mentioning products, then is loading and error variables. So this is what we are doing. We are destructuring all these elements because we know that this is what we get from this hook. And if I do this now, if I save this and refresh the page, okay, this is working just how it was working before creating the hook. So now this looks nice, this looks perfect. It has only one responsibility, which is to show the data, and this hook has one responsibility, which is to fetch the data. So this is how we fetch data from an API, and I think I can make some changes into it because this doesn't really look nice. We want to make our page look nicer as well. So till now I have shown you how to fetch the data, and this was the purpose of the video. And from now on I'm going to make some changes into the styles. So feel free to pause the video or to stop the video if you're done with the purpose. But yeah, you can still continue to watch it if you want to know how I add styles to it. It will be a basic job, but still, let's create the styles folder. I already have it here, and why not I create a home page, home.jsx. I'll create the home component here, and this will be returning nothing for now. Let's export it. So I have the home page. Then I want to have the component. So let's say I want to have the product card as well, and I will explain why I'm doing this. And let's create a component for that as well. We'll return just the fragments, and now export default product card. This product card is going to accept some props, which will be the price, thumbnail for the image, title, then description. I think that's enough. Okay, and inside it I think I'll make it a div element, and first I want to show the image. So the source tag will hold the value of thumbnail. Then I want to have the alternate text as well in case the page doesn't render, or the image doesn't render. Then this will contain the title. So if we don't get to see the image, we'll get to see the title. Then I will add, I will show the title of this page. Let's make it h2 and show the title. I want to see the description as well, so let's add a paragraph element, and this will be the description. And yeah, I'll show not the full description here. I want to show only the first 100 characters, 100 alphabets. So I'm going to do 0 100 like this, and I will add dot dot dot, so that means the user knows that there's more to it. And I want to show the price as well. Let's have it as a header again. Price, it will be in dollars. What else? Okay, I think I'm done. So this is the product card component, and I'm going to remove this logic from here. Okay, and I'm going to add it here in the home component. I'm going to import use fetch hook, and instead of showing this h1 tag or just the title, let me import the product card as well. I'm going to make sure that this is the product card. Okay, and we want to pass the title, which will be product dot title. We also have the thumbnail, so product dot thumbnail again. I want to pass the price, product dot price, and the description, so product dot description. Let's save it here, and in the app.jsx file I'm going to import the home component, and let's return it. I've added two CSS files in this project. The first one is a product card.css, where I've mentioned the width, border, padding, and margin for the product card. Then we have the home.css, where I've added the display property, the flex wrap, and justify content. I've imported these files in the home component and the product card component. And by adding these files, by adding the styles, now the UI looks like this. So now it looks decent, at least better than what we had before. We have the product cards. So this is the product card with the border, padding, and margin in between. And we have 194 of these. So this looks nice. And that's all for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I'll be sharing a link of the repository in the description box, and the next video will be on adding the pagination for this products list, because it's not really nice to have to scroll down through all these products just to get to the last product. So we'll be adding the pagination in the next video. So thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one, and make sure you subscribe the channel and like the video as well. Thank you.